Hi, I'm Dr. Mesnage, Scientific Director of the Buchinger Wilhelmi Clinic, and today I am with Mr. Tarafder Islam, who is the living proof that type 2 diabetes can be reversed and that fatty liver is also something that you can treat, and all of this with fasting. He has been coming to the clinic 5 times in the last 15 months to treat his disease, and today he will share with us why and also what he has been going through during this time. So it's really a story of scientific success, but also very human. Welcome, and thank you for sharing your experience. So how was your life before coming to the clinic, and how did you hear from us?
Well, before coming to the clinic, pretty much when I was a young boy, I knew about diabetes, and that's because I'm the 3rd generation diabetic. My maternal grandmother, severe diabetes, all of her siblings, diabetic, all of them died early, weight loss, high diabetes, other health issues. My mother, diabetic, all of her, she had 2 brothers. They all passed away relatively early. High diabetes, weight gain, significant weight gain, other health issues. So I sort of knew there was this ticking time bomb. You know, they say that if you put a frog in cold water and you slowly turn up the heat, after a certain amount of time, the frog dies.
Wow.
Diabetes is sort of that slow-moving sort of death sentence, and it's not pleasant.
Well, yeah, I'm sure in your life that you have seen the clock ticking, and I guess where you are from in the US, fasting is not known as a therapy for type 2 diabetes. And how did you get to the point where you discovered that fasting can help you?
Well, the way it turned out, I was diabetic. I was on medication, first, light dosage. And I was looking to, I was doing some research, and the name popped up, Professor Roy Taylor of Newcastle University. Now, this is where I'm going back probably 6-7 years roughly. And Professor Taylor at the time, he had done some definitive research which showed that diabetes was not so much, if you're predisposed to having diabetes, even a tiny amounts of fat, and we're talking sometimes just 1 gram in the liver and pancreas, can kick the whole thing into overdrive, which is why he was showing that people who may look thin can be diabetic versus obese people, extreme overweight, no diabetes. In my case, obviously, I was predisposed to having diabetes and I was overweight. So Dr. Taylor, Roy Taylor, the way he framed it was, if you can lose roughly, on average, 15 kilos, and this is even before I knew about Buchinger or anything else, the fact that there is hope, there is a possibility that this can be reversed, sort of got my analytical side going. So I was doing some research, and as I was doing the research, there were a couple of things that came about. One was there's a Prolon, which is a diet package in America.
Yeah, the fasting mimicking diet.
Yeah, fast mimicking diet
quite popular, developed by
Walter Longo.
Yes.
So I sort of tried that because that was easier. I could do it from home. Okay. And what I was finding was, yes, I was losing 4, 5, 6, 7 pounds, which is about 2 to 3 kilos. But then towards the end, I was again getting hungry. And when I say hunger, I don't mean just, you're feeling hungry. We're talking about this need somewhere within yourself, within myself. There was this call for, give me food, give me bad food. And it's continuous. It's not just one time, okay, let me drink some water. No, it grows. And so I tried that, and I said, that this is not doing what I need to do.
Yeah, this is a difficulty in general with this weight loss cycle. Sometimes people call that yo-yo because you are completely in a new metabolism,
Yep.
you change again, and this is completely challenging for the body. And yeah, that's why for us, we have a big weight on the re-education, the food reintroduction with nutritional counseling, because we know that this is a big challenge.
So going back about 5 years, so I had done that, Roy Taylor, I was looking at Walter Longer's Prolon package. And then I was looking at, okay, where can I go and do maybe a little bit longer fast, lose the weight and take it from there. Buchinger's name came up in my research. And so I came here roughly 5 years ago. I did a long fast. And I think back then this was around 20 days, maybe 21 days. I'll have to look at the records.
Yeah, that's quite a long one, yeah.
So it was a long fast. I did a very short refeeding. I think it was 3 days.
How did you feel during your first fasting experience? Was it scary for you to start and maybe difficult to remember?
It was a little bit difficult. I know it wasn't easy for me because I was still hungry, but I lost the weight.
Yeah.
So if you look at just the data, I definitely lost the weight. I step up on the scale. The weight had dropped a fair amount. My stomach circumference had dropped. The blood sugar, etc., parameters seem to have been doing better.
Yes.
Now here's the thing. It was a complete failure. I went back, and because I'm from Arizona, I flew from Zurich out to New York. I stayed overnight.
Yeah.
At that hotel that night, when I'm resting, I had dinner, a steak this big, this thick, because my body was saying, "You've starved us long enough. Give us this food." Within 2 months, I gained all the weight back.
Yeah.
Now, it's no one's fault. It was just, I was asking myself, what happened?
Yeah, the lifestyle after the food reintroduction is very difficult to maintain. That's something which we try to work on now, even at the research level in our scientific program. But it's clear that, the first fast, I remember your blood analysis, and clearly the blood sugar was better. You probably have lost a lot of abdominal fat, the one which is generally the wrong one. And so clearly that was a very good first step. But yeah, as you said, when you come home, very difficult. So, but what made you come again? Because then you decided to have this very long program where you came several times in a year. What pushed you to that?
Well, the way it worked is this was right about the time when COVID started coming up. So I had planned to come back, but I said, why was I feeling hungry? Now there's a Mark Light, a professor in America. He's now retired. I think he's probably in his 80s. And there was an old 1970s article in the New York Times where he proposed, and back then people sort of laughed at him, that there is a connection between the gut and the brain. And he was proposing, now we're talking way early 70s, even early 80s, where he said the gut and possibly the microbiome in the gut influences what we think. It's not the other way around. And it probably is not the problem with self-control. So I was thinking about that, and I was thinking, okay, so I did this fast, and I was so hungry, and it wasn't just the willpower. So sure, maybe 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, I hold off on eating the bad food. But after a certain point in time, the willpower sort of wilts away. Yeah. And how do I reverse that? I figured that I could lose weight at Buchinger. I wasn't sure how to reverse. Was it just my mind? Mark Light's research sort of said, you know what? Maybe, just maybe, it has something to do with my microbiome. Now, this is very early.
Yes, that's quite pioneer, because now clearly we know this is true, because after some decades of research, we know that the gut is almost like our second brain, that all these bacteria we have in our gut, they can produce molecules which can go to the brain, influence our cognition, mental health. and even sometimes the development of disease. And clearly hunger can really start in the gut. And in this case, the influence between both brain and gut is key. So,
and not only hunger, Robin, but also hunger for the bad stuff.
Yes, yeah.
So sugary food, fries with cheese on top, So as I was looking through that, I was thinking, okay, if I'm going to change my fasting routine, and keep in mind, back then, there wasn't a protocol at Buchinger or anywhere else that I knew where it talked about, I was thinking about more like a step. So I lose some weight, I sort of keep stable for a certain amount of time, then I revisit, lose some weight again, try to keep it stable. So it's sort of coming down this way. And this was in my mind, and I had done all that research. And so I came back after COVID, and I talked to my doctor, Dr. Marco Lebing, and I said, this is what I'm thinking. Now, here's the thing. As I said before, there still probably is no particular protocol for doing this 3-month.
No, there is no protocol, because this is really a big topic to know how long should one fast, how frequently for the long-term fasting. And we know that from wildlife and the history of humanity that most humans have been fasting according to seasons. And we see in our patients that once or twice a year is generally a good protocol for an average. But we know also for someone who has a disease that more can be better, but it's clear that it's still one case-by-case basis. So you had a good intuition, clearly.
Well, not only that, but when I spoke to Dr. Marco Lebing, and let me just say, he is a really good listener, because he could have very well said, no, that's not the protocol. I'm not going to allow that. I don't know. But he didn't say that. He said, tell me more. And I said, look, I have a feeling that the reintroduction of food, my previous visit, which was not successful, that needs to change. Matter of fact, I proposed to him that my reintroduction of food, or refeeding part, be longer than my fasting part. So the microbiome sort of regenerates.
Yes.
And I told him, right before this time, I ran into your name. And I was seeing some of the research you had done, some of the work that you were doing, and I was getting very excited. So I told Dr. Marco Lebing, you know what, you have this researcher here, Dr. Robin Mesnage. And I went on and on and on. And he was like, yeah, we just barely met him. How do you know so much about him? And so I kept talking. And he said, you know what, let's try your strategy. Let's see how it works. Because I already told him that I had booked my flight, and I was in the process of booking my visit 3 months onwards. So I basically said, I've done it. I can't cancel now. Okay, so you have to allow me. And he was very patient. And because I come up with these sort of new things, sort of non-protocol, he really thinks, he does his own research. So after I spoke to Dr. Lebing, I started my fast. And there's a person in your event planning. Her name is Eva. So I spoke to Eva, and I kept going on about Dr. Robin Mesnage, gut microbiome, and she kept saying, how do you know so much about it?
It's still quite new,
It's still quite new. And then I said, would it be possible? I know you did not give medical advice, because, but can I just meet him for 5 minutes? And she, I believe, talked to you, and pretty soon we did some email communication.
Yes.
And I met you, I remember, 10th October. 10th
well, you
October.
have a good memory. Yeah, it's.
And the thing is, when you and I talked, the more we talked, you didn't tell me right or wrong, but you just said there's stuff in the animal kingdom which supports some of my hypotheses.
Yeah, we knew from the research and studies, even in humans, that the food reintroduction was very important, and it was also for the gut microbiota. Clearly a key. And we had done this study also freshly published in the scientific program, where we showed that there was some changes during food reintroduction. And I had the intuition that there is some work to do on this level. And that's also now why we are still working on this. And clearly working together was also a learning curve, so that we get into this food reintroduction, because now it's still like when you look at all the fasting studies which are done in the world, there is quite an enthusiasm about fasting now. Long-term fasting, different types of intermittent fasting. Everyone is always looking at just the fasting window and how completely forget the food reintroduction, which we know is also when the organs are regenerating. So this is really a key moment.
Mm-hmm. Well, a few days after I had met with you, at the Buchinger clinic outside, from the doctor house, there's actually, you can walk outside on steps. So I was doing sort of a step workout, trying to do a little bit of exercise. So picture this, Robin. So I'm of course, at that time, obese. I had lost some weight, but still I was obese. I'm sweaty and I'm breathing heavily because this is hard workout. I come all the way up and I actually was on the ground because I couldn't. And guess who was walking down? Dr. Tarafder Wilhelmi, the owner and doctor and scientist of Buchinger Clinic. And I was like, as I'm breathing heavily, I said, Dr. Francois, I'm so glad to be here. Let me tell you about my idea. And I kept talking to her about the microbiome. And she was like, I think she was thinking, how does this guy know about Robin Mesnage and this? But you know what? And to her credit, she did not. First of all, she listened to me. I don't think I was coherent because I was like breathing heavily and trying to talk to her real quickly. But she actually went back and talked to you and said, he's going to come back every 3 months anyway. He's very determined. I think that's probably what she said. Can we do like a framework for a study?
Yeah, we decided to follow your case and to then use that as a support for a case report, because clearly this is very interesting for us. First, because of the resolution of the disease, like treating type 2 diabetes, and also now like we know that the fatty liver is also getting better, and also for the research on the food reintroduction. So how did you feel compared to the first fasting experience when you did this longest food reintroduction?
We're going back a few months now because you're asking me how I felt. First of all, with the longer food reintroduction, and by the way, I should probably take one step back because I actually spoke to one of your fantastic nutritionists, Ms. 𝗖𝗄𝗏𝗄𝗏𝗄𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 with her and I said, here's what I'm thinking. And she was like, okay, and she sort of crafted the food reintroduction menu. It wasn't just what was offered. She kind of took my data and she crafted a fairly nice program. It was very cute. And as I started it, at the very beginning, I was doing 10 days of 800 calories. But the trick was not the calorie. The trick was the diversity.
Yes, it's always like that when we introduce the food because the digestive system has been at rest. It doesn't want to see such a diversity, complexity, and to make it smooth and keep the effect of fasting and also re-educate your digestive system. It's always better to reintroduce one by one. And that's why we always look more about which foods and the number of calories. You are right.
So with her program, it was like a 10 days of 800, and if I remember it correctly, 5 days or 4 days of I believe it was 1,200 calories, because getting slowly. But what she did was she incorporated diverse varieties of grain, diverse varieties of vegetable, and even some fruit. Now let me again take a step back. I was at that time definitely diabetic. Definite. So she kind of said, you're diabetic. Why should we give you the fruit or something that may promote a little bit more diabetes? I said, look, I'm looking to increase my microbiome, increase the diversity. Nobody knows, and still we don't know exactly which grain or vegetable or fruit, which one really helps. All we know is a diverse diet helps. And I can't recreate what you're doing here at home. So help me out. And you know what? To her credit, she did. She said, okay, let's forget the diabetes part. And she did this diverse menu. So I was, in a given day, probably eating between 8, 12, 14 different, even if it's a small amount, just a few seeds here, a few nuts there, two different types of grains, 4 different types of vegetables, 3 of them cooked, 1 raw, just throwing it in, and because I could add salt and pepper, I said, you know what? I will eat whatever you put on my plate. Just bring it out. And I did. The difference I noticed was when I went back home, I still had cravings. It's not that the cravings went away and everything was great.
Yes, there is a discipline always.
There
it's not
a
that
discipline.
easy.
And because I had done the session with Ms. Brigitte, the nutritionist, what I was able to do is sort of tell myself, okay, which battles do I fight? For example, there was one battle that I could not win. The battle was late at night. It was my danger zone. If I'm stressed, working hard, or maybe there's something during the day, and I'm awake, guess what? That hunger thing
it's a
comes
difficult
back.
one, and it's an important one because we know that the circadian rhythms are really connected to our metabolism, and so this alternance of day and night, we should connect to this, and that's why many of these intermittent fasting protocols like the 16-8 are successful, and stopping to eat early in the evening is a key. So fighting the snacks at night, I guess this is a challenging one, but a very important one as well.
And you know how we solved it? She analyzed my food pattern, and she said, look, I told her that one thing that I could eat, which I think I shouldn't, but at least it might be less harmful, were a mixture of nuts. Now in Arizona, we get these mixed nuts, almonds, cashews, walnuts, and she sort of said, okay, have this much, an X amount. And she said, as long as you're staying away from like the ice cream, the sugary snacks, big chunks of beef, meat, curry, rice, vegetable, and you have this, it's the lesser of the 2 evils. Let's see, because she knew I would be back again in 3 months.
And the nuts don't have this simple sugar, which are already also creating this craving and this addiction. So it's clearly a healthier snack. And also something which you said is key is the dosage. So you create your portion and you don't take the bag. It's easier to control, and in this case, a good tip so that you can really regulate these.
So that really helped me in the first 3-month gap. Now, keep in mind, I would still say that I don't think my microbiome was set. I was still getting hunger. I had gained some weight from what I lost. So I came back the second time. This time, again, weight loss. Again, longer food reintroduction, and I was feeling a little bit better. Matter of fact, there's sort of, this is anecdotally, this is what happened. Usually during the fast, I dream of food, bad food.
That's generally the
case. I know it's normal, but I have it like, I can almost picture a juicy steak, big fries with melted cheese. First time, and even, I guess, the part of the second time, but towards the end of that fast, you know what I was starting to dream of? Roasted cauliflower.
Well,
roasted cauliflower. So I was thinking to my mind, somebody, somewhere in this body is sending a signal to my brain that roasted. Matter of fact, I never used to cook. My wife doesn't cook roasted cauliflower. I actually do that part of the cooking in the household. And I had tried that the 3 months in between the 2 fasts. And now something, hopefully it was the bacteria who was saying, feed us roasted cauliflower.
Feed us with good food, with fibers and polyphenols. And clearly this is a message from the gut. And also, I think the proof also that this like food re-education, like mental with the cooking classes and everything, and also physical, by reintroducing with diversity is really a key.
And speaking of exercise, I did start somewhat exercise, nothing too strenuous. It wasn't exact like it's a No, it was like, every other day I would do something. So it was going on side by side. So again, now I come back the second time, I do the long food reintroduction, and I go back and I'm feeling a little better when it comes to hunger. I'm still getting some of those, but probably not as bad as, 3-6 months ago.
Yeah.
So at this point in time, I had sort of an adverse situation, which was I go back after a month and a half, I have COVID.
Yeah, this is terrible because it was right in the epidemic of COVID, and clearly this is something which can put you back to square one because it has such an inflammatory effect on the body. Yeah. This is challenging, but luckily you persisted and you came back afterwards.
I came back, but here's the thing. I was fully vaccinated. I still had COVID, and whatever weight I lost after my second visit, I gained not only the full amount, but extra. Part of it was my food pattern in the last 1 month before my third visit to Buchinger. For some reason, I was craving sugar, like serious cravings. I don't think I can explain it that, maybe it was COVID or something, but I gained weight and I gained it very quickly. And I can tell you, people who come here, they will always face some criticism from time to time. And in my case, people close to me were saying, look, you've already spent money, time, energy, and now you're back to where even before you lost the weight, And I said, you know what? Let me continue. I know I had a setback.
It's a cumulative effect because even if you took back the weight, when you look at your blood analysis, your blood glucose was still going better. So it was really still the good decision to persist.
And so I come back the third time and I do again the fast, the long reintroduction of food. And by this time, things are more automatic. I know what to expect. Dr. Lebing, because I keep coming every 3 months like clockwork, and I update him on what happened in the previous 3 months, same with Ms. Bly, and I was also talking with you, and we sort of started seeing a pattern. I would lose weight, I would generally gain a little bit back, but my blood sugar, some of the other markers are slowly improving. It wasn't like that, but slowly improving. And so after the third time, the fourth time, from my fourth to my fifth time, so this is my fifth time. So the 3 months prior to this visit, the hunger, especially that late night, give me back, that has been the least in my life that I can remember.
Well, this is very good news.
I can remember. I've had the healthiest food. Now I spend more time cooking, and my wife also helps out. Matter of fact, we change some of the foods we buy from non-organic to organic. Some of the oils we use, and also the timing of the food. So, for example, now I definitely practice at least 14-hour gaps.
Yeah, this is key because clearly this is realigning your body with natural rhythm. And now, clearly after this visit, when we look at your blood parameters, you are more in a safe zone. And this fatty liver, which disappeared, this is also something quite extraordinary for us because fatty liver disease, this is something which is quite common in the US, in Europe. I think it's 1/3 of the people having this fat in the liver. And if you talk to a treating doctor, generally they say there is no solution for this because actually there is no drug invented for fatty liver. But we know from our study and even experiences from decades ago that fasting is really good to address fatty liver because during fasting, you will use the fat in your liver as a source of energy. And so this is really treating you naturally and very quickly and effectively. So this is really a very interesting testimony for the science and also for viewers and other people who want to come to the clinic because it's really like the real case, like showing that there's ups and downs. Sometimes there is COVID, you can't predict that. There's the cravings, it's hard at home, but I think that you're really showing that this journey has been fruitful in the end, because now you are really in a safe zone. Will you continue practicing fasting in your life now that you are better?
Sure. Well, if I can just take a step back, Ramin. The parameters improved so much that I am now considered medically only pre-diabetic.
Yes.
So no longer, matter of fact, it changed my chart. My doctor in America was a bit surprised, and he was like, okay, how did this happen? So, but not only that, the fatty liver one, I had my liver, and this is Dr. Siegler. She conducted the FibroScan, and Dr. Lebing also did that. At one time, I had higher than 2/3 of my liver had, fat or the rating, I forgot the name. I think it's called IQR. It was over 2/3 fat. And there was some problems. Now I'm basically down probably less than 11% and in some cases, in one of the studies, it was I don't have fatty liver. So it not only reversed, but reversed dramatically. My stomach circumference went down multiple centimeters. Matter of fact, my wife bought these pants for me. I've got to go back and tell her it's loose. Okay.
So if you compare from the beginning of your journey to now, how much weight did you lose?
20 kilos.
Wow, that's quite
44 pounds.
Good score. Yes. Congratulations.
And those are the quantitative things. My other markers like cholesterol, triglycerides, those are all much, much, much better.
Yeah.
However, there's a qualitative aspect, which is, remember I kept telling you that hunger. It is significantly reduced.
Yeah.
And it didn't happen in one day. It didn't happen at my first, even in my second visit, but starting with the third, starting with the fourth, now it's a lot more manageable. Even during stressful times, I can say, you know what, I'm not feeling the urge to eat.
Yeah, and when you have like disease, obesity, this can be like a vicious cycle, very difficult to control. But when you get on the right slope, this is a virtuous cycle. Yeah. And now you have lost this abdominal fat, which is a contributor to craving because it can secrete a lot of hormones. Yeah. And the waist circumference is really something very important for our doctors, because sometimes you may be obese and have a lot of fat under your skin, but the abdominal fat is really the one which makes us sick in our society. And clearly now you have reached probably a new normal, and hopefully you will stay in this safe zone afterward. Yeah.
And that kind of brings me to the question you asked, would I continue?
Yeah.
So the short answer is absolutely, but it's all data dependent. For example, the one that I'm going to continue and maybe try to enhance is my overnight fast. So for example, right now I usually have dinner at 6.
Yeah.
And I have breakfast roughly around 8. And I know you and I talked with Dr. Marco Lebing, that instead of 14, if that can be moved to more like 15 or 16 hours, there may be an increase in beneficial bacteria, which, if you think about it, has been one of the main reasons why I keep coming back, and the long food reintroduction.
Well, that's what we saw even now in the last gut microbiota test that you had. There was clearly this increase in the bacteria, which are really flourishing when there is a fasting state, even overnight. And this intermittent fasting was clearly, I think, a contributor to this, and a very good hygiene to have. And whether it's 14, 15, 16 hours, we do our best, but it's also a reality that in our life we have work, there's kids, unexpected event. And the most important is really to always do our best and not just stick to a schedule. I'm not a big fan sometimes of these apps which send you a reminder that you have to stop right now. It's better sometimes to re-educate your feelings and then to know when you are hungry and to know when you want food, but you are not really hungry. This is very different. And that's something that, this is a feeling that many people have lost, I think, in our society. And now we are in a society eating 5 to 6 meals a day, when we are programmed to clearly switch between eating and fasting. And getting back to this rhythm of nature, I think, is very important for getting old in good health.
Yeah.
And
So that's the short time, everyday thing. Regarding my returning to Buchinger, as I said, it's data dependent. Right now, instead of 3 months, which I unfortunately can't make, I have some personal business issues, so I'm going to make it roughly 6 months. Now, in between, if I see things are not working out, the data showing that, my blood sugar, weight, stomach, obviously I'm going to make some emergency adjustments. I already have one of your fasting boxes at home.
Yeah,
so I took that. So I'm prepared if I need to do a short 5-day fast. I have that. I'm just not going to use it until I need it. And then I'll be back here in 6 months and we can review the data and see if there's any change. And from then on, probably every 6 months.
Yeah, it's a good idea to make it longer, because in the end, we don't want to make you addicted to the clinic. The hope is that we will treat you, that you will get healthy, get good habits and a new lifestyle. And if I don't see you ever at the clinic again, I hope I will see you in other circumstances. But that would be a good news if it's because you are healthy.
And I am on my way to achieving what I feel with the reversal of diabetes, all the other health parameters. But the thing is, it's still relatively early, so I have to be not only careful, but mindful of if things change, how do I get back to the set point?
But having the habit of fasting like once a year, I think the long-term fast is really good hygiene for regeneration, and because intermittent fasting has very good benefits for body weight regulation, metabolic regulation, but the long-term fasting is more like a deep clean. You really have the regenerative effect that you don't have in short-term fasting. So it's good to keep this habit regularly. And it's true that the fasting box can be a good tool for a short fast, at least. It's not like a long-term fasting, of course, but it can provide you a short reset.
And see, when I started the protocol, sort of, me, Dr. Lebing, the every 3 month fast was a little bit unusual, especially 5 times in a row. I feel, and maybe the research report, once you guys do the case report, can show that I have not seen any adverse effects. So generally, we are told not to overdo the fasting, which is why I just picked 3 months time frame. Now, during the 3 months, I don't fast. I don't, other than the sort of overnight fasting, which is regular rhythm. But I don't fast like, oh no, I'm not going to eat today or something. I don't do that. So I just let the body go.
Yeah, it's all personal. That's why our fasting recommendations are always personalized, because I think some people would benefit of the 3 months regular fasting, but for some people it would be too much. So, but what I hope really in the end is that this case report that we are writing with your data and your experience, this will be an inspiration and another proof for the medical community that type 2 diabetes is not a disease which is dooming you and condemning you to have pills the rest of your day and life, and that this can be a disease which can be cured, which can be reversed, and that fasting is a key for that. So that's really a big hope I have. So, well, thank you for sharing all of these life experience from like first hand, because we do a lot of research and always present our results in scientific publication, but it's always an average. But behind this average, there is always some humans with different challenges, different social contexts, and it's really important to understand really from first hand what can be such a journey that you went through. So thank you. And thank you for watching. And if you want to know more about long-term fasting and especially type 2 diabetes, fatty liver, you can watch our video and follow us on our social network, including this YouTube channel.